truth is, the process is very important. So if I end up speaking about some things that you feel like, well, I'm there already, I've already taken care of that, I would encourage you.
Mordechai, they forgot to turn this on. Could you start from the beginning again? Like a 2-second, just so that if people watch it, they could get the whole, everything you said.
Okay. I'm Mordechai Kruger. I'm the director of Pathways to Parnassa. Thank you, Rabbi Werdy, for inviting me here tonight. And now we can begin. Yes, you won't have to go through the whole thing over again, but you got to hear the story. So even if you have a sense that, well, I'm pretty clear on what I like to do. I like to be in sales. I like to be in business. I like to be in a profession. I would encourage you to kind of stick with me here. Take a few steps back. Open your mind a little bit, because no matter what it is you're thinking you want to do, it's really helpful, maybe vitally important, to really sharpen your focus and zero in on what really makes that the right job for you. So even if you've got a sense like of where you think you'd like to be, I like to be in business, I like to be in a profession, real estate, stocks, I like to be rich. That's probably like crossed someone's mind. Like I say, stick with me, and let's see if there isn't some value in taking a step back and really zeroing in on the key points that make this the right direction for you. So, let's begin. The right job for you is when you first use your strongest skills, get some timing here, to produce maximum value for an employer. 3 steps. 3 vital steps. I want to make it very clear here. The worst enemy of a job hunter is the idea of, I'm looking for something. You hear this all the time. You know, it's time to find a job. What are you going to do? I'm looking for something. That is horror. That is the Shiva Madure of unsuccessful job hunting. Why? Because if you can't articulate what it is you're ready to produce for an employer, I promise you, he's not going to do you the favor and figure it out for you. You've got to come to an employer, and as we will learn, that means really picking your employer, and you've got to be ready to tell him, I am your matana min hashamayim. I am the guy you've been waiting for. Because I know I have skills that I know you need, and I'm ready to show you, that's a key word, show you, and we'll explain it, how I can contribute to you. Now let me explain. Once upon a time, you didn't hear this kind of talk. Possibly your parents will tell you, I found a job because I was walking down the street and I saw a sign in a store, I went in, I spoke to the people, they needed someone, I went to work. Right? Or I met a friend, my father-in-law has an associate, somebody had a business, I got started. People talk about this all the time. But in this day and age, it rarely works. And my approach is that if you want to be a success, play the odds. The fact that you know one guy who happened to find a job, he was just kind of floating around and it just worked out great, and today he drives a Lexus and lives in a mansion. I don't know the neighborhood well enough to say where that mansion would be, but I'm sure you do, right? It happens. Sure, it happens. Once in about 10 or 20,000 or a million times. But the other people who are getting jobs and step by step moving ahead, they're following a very specific process. And that's what I'm going to speak to you about, and I invite you to join in. So the first part of this is going to be to identify your strongest skills. Why? Simple. Because whatever job you want, someone else is also going to want it. why? As a matter of fact, not only is someone else that you know or someone who lives near you also going to want it, but in our time, there's someone in China who wants it, there's someone in India who wants it, and there's a company that's inventing a computer program that will do it without any people involved at all. All of those factors are after your job, and you must compete. There are no jobs waiting open. Gee, I hope someone will show up and take this job. If that's the case, it's not a job that you want to go get. And it's certainly not one you're going to want to tell your mother about, and God forbid, not your wife. So you're going to be competing. And just like in every other situation, there's a reason why A-Rod is a hitter and not a pitcher and not a hockey player. We know that reference around here, right? Because that's his strongest strength. And just because you're good in one thing doesn't mean that you could go ahead and do something else, even if it seems kind of similar. So it's really important, in order to be successful, that you come forward playing your strongest skills. And we need to focus on what those are. The second part is, it's wonderful to talk about skills. It's wonderful to talk about dreams and aspirations. There are dreamers all over the place who haven't gotten a job. There are people with advanced degrees who don't have jobs. I got an email the other day from a PhD in chemistry who doesn't know how to find a job. Why is that? Makes no sense. Chemistry is pretty popular these days. A lot going on in that field. Yeah, this guy has no clue how to find a job. Why? Because he hasn't dealt with the second point. He hasn't determined how his skills are going to produce value for an employer. That is the second part of your homework. You have to be ready to explain not only what my skills are, but how do my skills translate into something that you need, something that you're willing to pay for. If you're the world's most brilliant artist, for example. I have no idea if it is. Okay? Right? If you have the most beautiful artwork in the world, but nobody particularly wants to hang it on their wall, you will have the great privilege of being an artist and starve. Not recommended. On the other hand, there are plenty of people who start with a talent in art and figure out, for example, a way to make that something valuable, make that something useful, something that people will pay for. Now we're talking not just pursuing a dream, not just using a skill, but actually doing a job. And the third section of that is you, only you, will then determine who is your customer. It's another word for employer. Meaning, now that I know what it is I'm going to do and how it produces value, I will then figure out, and I'll teach you how to do these things, who is the employer who will pay me to do that. And then you knock on his door and you say, I am here to do a job for you. So wait a minute. No one wanted that? He didn't say he was looking for anybody. That's true. There is never a need to wait for a wanted. Because the truth of the matter is that over 70% of hiring decisions are made for a position that didn't exist until the right person came along. Okay? When the right person shows up, then the employer says, you know what? I could use that. Until now, I was getting along. But now that, because I didn't even know there was such a person who might put together the skills and the motivation that you're showing me. But once I meet you, hey, I could do something with that. You come forward. Let me tell you a story. Very early in my social work, so a very, very sweet youth came to me We'll call him Shloimeh. Shloimeh was in his 60s, I think he was 62 years old. And he had lost his job as a diamond cutter. You may know that diamonds today are not what they once were, especially in the Yiddish Geschäften that used to be in diamonds. Not so great anymore in many ways. Okay. So Shloimeh had lost his job. At 62 years old, he's not learning a new skill. Not happening. On top of that, he had no papers. He was an Israeli who'd been working without a green card. So he's going to have to find an employer who's willing to kind of play along and will overlook certain points. Not an easy way to go. I, at that time, was not in the business of helping people find jobs. Okay? I was there to counsel. I was able to help them get a lawyer if they were in danger of bankruptcy. But hey, Shloimeh was a tired Yid, and he liked me, and he liked to schmooze a little bit. So we talked a little bit about what he might do. So I said, listen, Shloimeh, it's clear. Your next job is also going to be diamond cutting. You're not going to do anything else. And therefore, the most important thing for you to do is to stay in touch with all the diamond shops that you know of until somebody ends up needing you. He thought that was a pretty good job, pretty good piece of advice. So, off he went. About a week and a half, 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. Mordechai, I got the job. Wonderful, Shloimeh. What happened? He said, I walk on 47th Street. I walk back and forth. All the shops, I know them. Then I see a shop I not see this guy before. I decide to go in and say hello. I walk into the shop, and I make a big noise, and I say, I want to see the boss. Ooh, big noise. The boss come running out. You want to know what is this big noise? He says, what you doing here? I said to him, you need me more than I need you. He says, what I need you for? He says, I tell him, because what I can do to a stone, nobody else can do. And I prove it to you. Yeah, how do you prove it? I've worked for you for a week. Don't pay me. After a week, you see, I'm the best. Mordechai got the job. If you took an entire library of books written by the biggest experts with PhDs and Nobel Prizes and everything else, you could not find a more perfect job search than what Shloimeh, the diamond cutter, did. He got it all right, and I urge you to keep that story in mind. What did he do? His strongest skills, to maximum value, to the employer that he knew needed those skills. And he didn't knock on the door and say, gee, are you hiring? I'm looking for a job. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't wait for it one day. He didn't speak to the secretary. He went straight to the guy who could hire him, and he said, I know that you need me. I am the solution to your problem, and I'm ready to prove it. That is a job search. I am the solution to your problem, and I'm ready to prove it. Okay. Keep that in mind. The area of skills is broader than most people think. People know, well, if you're good at math, that's a skill. If you're good in, if you're artistic, if you're a techie, those are skills. But the truth is, there's a lot more to it. But the most important thing about skills is never tell anyone a skill. Show them a skill. Meaning, either the ultimate, as Shloimeh did, tell the guy, I'm ready to go into the shop and do it, and you can watch me. That's great. If you don't get a chance to do that, never say, I'm reliable, I'm talented, I'm creative, I'm hardworking, I'm a team player. That is saying it. And of course, that means nothing. Always be ready to show it. How do you show it if you're not doing it in front of him? Tell them a story of when you were reliable, of when you were creative, of when you worked well with a team. tell a story which illustrates you using the skill that you are claiming to have. Okay? Now, I want to expand your concept of skills a little further. We don't really want the beginning of this. We want to start at the 40-second mark. So let's see if we can do that. Nope, we didn't want that. Go back. Okay, that's only it's working. Close, close. Nah, all right. I guess the video isn't liking video right now. But we're gonna go and find it. I don't want to miss this one. Because this is a key way to start thinking about skills. So let's minimize this for a second. Thank you for your patience. Ah, here it is. So it is. There you go.
Isaac. When you know
So in the world.
I deserve a job after graduation because
No, you don't.
Like 100.
It's not coming up on the screen anyway, the video.
It's not?
No, just that little thing is further.
I am an employer. I am an employer.
I'm an employer, and I have jobs.
Good jobs, good jobs. And I'm hired. But if you want to work for me, you need to know how I really feel.
Still
You
not.
see, I am entitled.
I am entitled.
I don't know.
I am
But it's
entitled.
worth listening to. You still get the point.
I'm entitled to your arriving here to the job on time.
Every day until the very last minute of your shift.
And if you're scheduled at 9,
And arrive at 9, you're late.
I am entitled to you being positive and enthusiastic as you approach the task you are assigned.
Regardless of what they are.
Or anything that may have happened to you before you did the work.
I get it. I have no right to say how you dress, communicate, or act on your own time. However, while you're at work, I'm entitled to you being a professional. And acting and speaking like one.
Showing up dressed and groomed in a way that best represents this organization.
And the image that we need to project to our clients and to the world.
I'm entitled to you doing the work you are paid to do to the very best of your ability. And then some.
The only way this business is going to grow and provide opportunity for you to grow with it is if you're continually looking for ways to excel
Achieve, solve problems.
and add value whenever and wherever you can. I'm entitled to your respect for my rules, whether or not you agree with them.
I want you to enjoy working here and like your manager.
But that's not a condition of your willingness to follow company policies.
I am entitled to the truth.
And yes, I can handle the truth.
So if you're not ill, please don't call in sick.
If you handle money or merchandise, every cent must be accounted for.
If you lie, cheat, steal, fudge,
Or hook a buddy up.
Even once.
The trust I need to have in you will forever be in question.
But it's our customers who are even more entitled.
They're the ones who will wages and keep this business running.
that entitles them to fast, friendly, and courteous service.
From everyone in this organization.
So you need to go out of your way to show them how much we appreciate their business.
So if you agree to this list of entitlements, then you're not only entitled to a paycheck,
You're entitled to me living up to these same high standards.
But hey, if you feel like we're asking for too much,
then you're entitled to look for another employer that will not ask these things of you.
But the odds of you finding one aren't good.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. Sorry for the technical difficulty. The most important point that I meant
Cheese, where is it?
did not ask for that. The most important thing that I want to bring out from that video is that there's a whole list of skills that you might be taking for granted. But what you see from this video, or from listening to it, is employers don't. To be honest, they are deathly afraid of hiring someone who doesn't do the things that these people were talking about. Meaning, showing up on time, being ready to work hard, being courteous, obeying the rules of the organization, following through on the policies of the business, giving great service, caring about customers. All that should be obvious. Perhaps once upon a time it was, but it isn't today. And as young people especially, you have to realize you guys have a terrible rap, right? You really do. It's not your fault. I'm sure you're not that way, but the employer doesn't know that. And therefore, when you come and apply for a job, as much as he might look like another guy here in the neighborhood, he may even daven next to you in the shul, when it comes to hiring you, he's not your friend, because money is money, and business is business. And he is petrified that he's going to hire what I commonly call a slacker. What does a slacker look like around here? Perhaps he's got an extra bren for davening a little bit longer than everybody else. Right? After all, isn't that good? Yeah, it's good. Do it on your time, right? He's got to make sure he's taking care of his mitzvahim, and he's got to make sure that he's, he davens extra long on Chol HaMoed. All wonderful things. But the guy who's got a job doesn't do that. Okay? And you have to be sensitive to how seriously that geschmacka guy that you know in shul and you schmooze with all the time, once it's in his business, he's not geschmack, he's serious. And he wants you there on time, and he wants to see you sweating all day long, just like he does, and at the end of the day, he will happily give you a paycheck. So these kinds of things are also skills, okay? And talking about examples where you have done these kinds of things, where people relied on you, where you delivered, where you innovated, you were creative, you cared about something, those are skills. And you should, and we're going to start right now working on how you can be ready to give examples that prove that you have these skills. Again, you can't walk up to a business and say, I'm reliable, I'm creative, I'm a team player. But you can tell a story that shows that you work. So I'm going to give you an example, and then you're going to do one. That's why you have these today. I was speaking to a high school group last week. Perfect example. I was speaking to a high school group, and I asked them the same question. Think of something you have done where you showed these kinds of skills, that you were reliable, that people could depend on you, that you were steady, showed up on time. Think of an example, okay? Boy raised his hand, he's senior in high school, 18 years old. I said, okay, what's your example? He said, I go to Camp Nagila, which is a kibbutz camp near Woodburn. You know that neck of the woods. And I work in the kitchen. A lot of the kids who go there don't pay, but they work somewhat to pay for their salary. So he works in the kitchen. I said, tell me about your work. He said, I'm in the kitchen every morning at 3 a.m., except Fridays at 2 to get the day's cooking started. High school kid is in the kitchen every day at 3 a.m. Proof of reliable, right? What do you do there? Okay, every day during the week, I start on breakfast. On Friday, I start on the Shabbos cooking. Who taught you how to do all these things? Well, mostly I did research. I learned how to do it myself. A skill. I can learn new skills on my own. Okay? Fine. You do it by yourself? He said, no, there's two younger guys who go in there with me, and I'm in charge of them. You're a supervisor. How did they learn how to do it? I trained them. Okay? And how do they know they're doing a good job? I tell the senior cook. I evaluate. You're hearing all these skills that are being used? Okay? Okay. I said, how do you decide what's going to get cooked? Well, we plan is a skill, right? We plan menus, okay? I said, and is there a certain time when breakfast has to be ready every day? Sure, 7:30, there's going to be 200 people waiting for their breakfast. So you meet a deadline. Is it always easy to get everything done? No, you meet a deadline under high pressure, okay? Fine. So, do you always have the equipment you need to do the job? No, very often we don't. So I mean, you improvise, right? And is it the same thing all the time? No, sometimes I ask around and find out about new things to bring into the menu. I mean, you innovate, okay? You're hearing these verbs? Those are skills. They're called soft skills or transferable skills. They will be useful no matter what you do. So what we just accomplished with this fellow, and it's going to be your turn in a second, is that perhaps one day he's going to apply for a job. I think he said he wants to be a lawyer. So he's going to apply for a job with a law firm. So he's going to think, gee, should I write that I used to cook breakfast in Camp Nagila? You know, what does the law firm care that I used to cook breakfast? Probably not much. But does the law firm care that I was reliable, innovative, able to improvise? I met deadlines under pressure. I planned, I supervised, I mentored. Yes, those are key skills. Those are the most valuable skills. Anybody can sit in a classroom and learn how to fill out a legal form. But can you come into a work environment and bring that kind of rock solid reliability, that kind of, I'm going to figure out a better way to get the job done, I can work with people and create a team? That's real value. Those are the skills that are really going to be important, and learning how to say them to an employer is a key approach to job hunting. So right now, please, each of you, take the paper in front of you, take a couple of minutes. I'd like you to think of something that you have done. Just write down what you did. You know, like cooking in camp, etc. We'll work on bringing out the skills in a moment, right? Something that perhaps you didn't expect to have been proof of your job skills, right? But in fact, we might find that there's a lot more there than meets the eye. So then, see what you can come up with. Similarly, when my youngest daughter is a food technologist, I'll stop talking in a moment. She had an interview with Pepsi. You may have heard of that company. She's actually working for Dannon. You may have heard of that one too. In any case, at Pepsi, in the interview, they asked her, have you ever led a team? She's in school. She's never had a job before, so what kind of team were they talking about? She told them about her and her two sisters cooking for a 3-day Yom Tov. They were very impressed. That was an excellent example of teamwork. Okay? She told them it was, to your eye, you would think of it as having Thanksgiving dinner twice a day for 3 days in a row. Okay? So there are skills hiding in many things that you may have done that you didn't think of as a job. Right? Whether it was in yeshiva, were you organizing chavusas, were you volunteering to take care of some responsibility, whether it was in a summer program, whether it was in a Kira program, whether it was outreach, mitzvahim, whatever you call them, right? Hunt through what you've done and think of an example where we might be able to pull out some skills that you didn't think of in terms of the job. Or maybe you did. Your turn.
So these skills that we're writing down will be put on a resume?
I'm saying that they may have a place on the resume, they certainly will have a place on a cover letter, and they certainly will have a place in your conversation with a potential employer.
Skills.
Right. Once you know how to talk about them, right, like I say, instead of scrambling eggs, but bringing out the work skills that are transferable, then they're going to become very important. Good, the thing loads the pen to down. If you're still writing, that's fine, but, you know, I would, the thing loads it down, plus. Now, how many of you really couldn't think of anything? Excellent. That's actually what I
It was
expected.
hard, it was hard, it was hard.
It was hard,
I
okay.
cited,
Now, the truth is, I want to tell you something.
Old examples.
You have a tremendous advantage here. A typical group of from guys your age in Flatbush or in most other Hasidic neighborhoods would not be able to do that. And you know why? As I thought to myself when I was planning this, Chabad is the most entrepreneurial Hasidus in the world. You're very used to ideas of going out and doing things. And that happens to be a tremendous advantage for this part of your life. I would urge you to think about what you're hearing other people talk about. And especially if you're at the younger end of the group that's here, it may guide you in looking for more opportunities as time goes on. I always urge people, even if they're already working, and certainly if they're at the beginning of their preparation for a career, to look for new chances to stretch your skills and gain experiences. Okay? Whatever it is, because working with people, communicating, organizing, always will be valuable skills. And the more that you exercise those skills, the more you'll have. Okay, who wants to share an example of this? Something that you did. Okay? What? Talking. Don't have names here, so talk about this. You said you'd come up with one, so tell us what it is, please.
I said I would. I didn't say that, I just thought that's a skill.
They're not one yet.
I mean, I'm thinking about it.
Okay, so top
I'm not
here.
sure what to say.
Okay. All right. You want to think a little longer? Okay. Who's going to help him out?
I have to think a little more.
Okay.
I can say something for him.
Okay, that'd be good.
You give me permission?
Right.
Give me
What about
permission.
Topman?
A skill? No, a skill that I've observed about you.
Okay, let him say it, let him say it.
He
Okay.
arranges minyanim from scratch, from nothing.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Yeah.
See that?
Perfect. Oh,
Not a skill.
that is exactly what I'm after here. Is you haven't focused on that as a skill. You do it because you natural. Right? You wanted to help out. You're a friendly guy. You
That's
saw
part
a
of my
need.
job that I do already.
Okay, but I assume that right now, this job doesn't pay you very much, otherwise you probably.
That's not my job.
Yeah, okay, so one day you're gonna be looking for a job, okay? In that experience, are skills that you can use to show your ability to innovate, to bring people together, to organize, okay? These are critical. And you are in fact using those skills, okay?
Right.
And I'm urging you to think of that as a skill that you will one day bring to the table for an employer, okay? Now, I'm not trying to destroy your L'Shem Shemayim kind of. Okay? You know, okay, now, I used to organize minyanim because I want to do a mitzvah. Now I'm going to organize minyanim because I want to one day get a job. I'm not trying to do that. I do think, though, that, hey, if it works, it works. Okay? And all of this can be valuable for the future. Okay, so let's think about that. So please tell me about your minyan organizing.
I mean,
What do you do?
well, sometimes, like when I'm in a show
Okay.
during the week. First of all, I'm an Avon now.
Okay,
I dine by the Yom all the time.
okay,
But not only that, sometimes like on Shabbos, when I'm in a different show, like one of these shows here in the neighborhood,
okay,
it'll be short. I'll go outside and, like run around.
okay.
A few
Stop
times
there. Run outside and go up to total strangers and ask them to come in and make a minyan?
Sometimes.
Okay, would you be eager to do that? No, you'd be, I would. Are you kidding? Right? You're willing to put yourself out, as a benefit to other people who otherwise would just not have it in you. But you're willing to approach a total stranger, right, and ask them to come and join you. A skill that, as we just demonstrated, many people don't have.
Sometimes out of town, out of your own neighborhood, sometimes you'll be more,
Could be, because then you don't feel like, what are the chances I'll walk up to someone who really knows my mother and say, you know what your son was doing this morning? Right? All true.
Exactly.
Nonetheless, but you did it. Okay?
That's right.
Okay. That's skill. One day, for example, you may find yourself in a sales position where cold calling is how you make your living.
That's what I do.
Okay, well, cold calling is not all that different from bringing somebody in for the minion, and believe me, you could have a long list of people, perhaps many of them sitting right here, who would rather sit in a cold room and starve than do cold calling. Cold calling is scary to many people. Okay? If you find yourself comfortable with it, that's a major skill. So if you've never done it in a sales setting, but you go and approach someone where the job includes that skill, and the guy says, well, how do you know you can do cold calls? A lot of people can't do it. You say, well, let me tell you how I take care of a minion. I go out onto the street and I find people and I drag them in. That's cold calling. Okay? You've just demonstrated a skill. Okay?
Advertising also.
I'm sorry?
Translate advertising.
Absolutely. Any sales, really. Okay, let's find another one. Anybody else? Another example. Ah, I saw it. Was that a hand?
No.
Anybody else have a... Yes, in the corner, please.
Being an older brother, I think, in the family. Being an older brother.
Okay, yes, tell me, what happens?
Mediation.
Okay.
You have a lot of, I guess, following, let's say, taking care of for your parents as following instructions.
Okay.
Planning.
Conflict resolution?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we come up with.
Planning?
Pretty much making my list, yeah.
Okay. Do you ever counsel your younger siblings?
Sure.
Okay. Guidance as to perhaps with yeshiva or something to learn or some effort to get involved in, a chesed to volunteer for?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Counseling? Okay. Do you ever evaluate the results of that counseling?
Yeah.
You know, did you stay in touch with them? You keep helping them along, and they come back to you, and you sometimes you take a different direction. Okay, this is what happened. Maybe we should try something different. Okay, so you've evaluated results.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So there you go.
Oh, I just want to bring an example.
Go ahead.
A little add to what I did said before.
Okay.
This past Shabbos, there was a you know, we have the big shul on 770.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've heard.
So there was a minion there for Kriya, and I wanted maftir.
Okay.
But it wasn't available. But you know what I did? Not everyone would do this. You
Yeah,
know what
I'm
I
sure
did? I split the minion up. So I could get maftir.
Okay. No, you split the meeting up so the other guy could get mine.
He's honest. Okay, that's it. I just wanted to bring it up.
I agree. I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%.
Okay.
Okay, so right now I want to just I want to just leave you with this one point before we go on, okay? And that is that many experiences, many things you've done can be examined, can be dissected to bring out skills that really were used that you didn't even cover the skills on, right? Just by the way, you talk about going out, and, you know, the value of going out on the street and getting someone to join a minion. I was at, why was I there? I don't remember. But I was at a function for the Chabad of the Five Towns. You probably know Rabbi Walwick.
I heard of him, yeah.
Okay, pretty well known around here, Schneider Walwick. Okay? I'm an accountant, I do his taxes, I take care of his, you know, his cash flow and his bookkeeping, whatever. But because of that, his life works better, he's less stressed, his business is more successful. That we should see as something very meaningful. Someone's life is better because I did my job. And the fact that he paid me for it is not a contradiction. I don't have to think about, well, now that he paid me, maybe he even paid me very well, now I have to give back. I gave! I mean, obviously you should do chesed and tzedakah too. But the fact that you did your job well, and he recognized that by paying you, means that your job had meaning to him. I think that's a very important concept. And I don't think people think about it often enough. The very fact that somebody benefited from the work that you did means that your work was meaningful to them. So that's a side of it. But it's always there. It's always there. But you always can look for a way to add additional meaning. I'm not against that, right? By looking for these add-ons, so to speak. Another question? Yeah.
No, I just read an audiobook I was listening to that had just exactly what you're saying. It was cash for value.
Yes.
As long as it's cash for value, it's always the same.
So I feel very strongly about that. You know, and just the opposite. We always should be looking for that opportunity to understand the impact of our work. I tell you, if you're an accountant, if you are a social worker, whatever it is you're doing, if you own real estate, and people have a reliable place to live at a fair price, and people like mentioned, that's value. Believe me, there's plenty of other people who are not doing this. Right? So there you go. Okay, let's move on.
Sorry, the alternative is the problem.
Yes?
I agree with you on what you said 100%. And the issue would be when the person is doing meaningful work, but he's not getting paid for it, and he feels like at the end of the day, he feels slighted by the fact that his meaningful work is not going to put bread on the table.
Okay, so one thing's for sure. In those 3 steps, right, in terms of the skills, the value for the employer, so we should be thinking ahead of time of how to take our skills and create something that's valuable to that employer. That's very important. But we also should be aware, I think it's helpful to realize that almost everybody has trouble sending a bill. In other words, they've done a service, whether it was law, or they've made a performance, or they've helped in some way, they brokered something, and now it's time to send a bill. Right? There are huge numbers of businesses that work that way, right? And every single one of them, if you speak to the people or if you read their literature, you will find that their people feel, I have trouble telling you that you owe me $1,000 for what I did for you. $1,000 went from, it took you 5 minutes to make a phone call? Of course, what does that mean? It was $1,000 to make the one that worked, and the 25 others that didn't, or had the knowledge to make the call to the right person, and to say the right words, and to emphasize the right points, right? So the value was clearly delivered. But now you're charging $1,000 for making a phone call. And so I thought, I have a problem with that, right? When I help someone get a job. So of course I feel great, right? It's wonderful if we help someone get a job. I don't like to pay too, right? I thought it was my problem. You know when I realized how universal it was? I happen to have a cousin whose husband is a world-famous chazan. He performs all over the world. He's one of the top names. Doesn't matter which one. I'm telling you, you've seen his name, you probably have to have his tapes. A major, admired chazan, okay? He performs with philharmonics, he performs with orchestras, he travels all over the world. He's a pro. And I had him at my shop. It's a second marriage. So I became related to him a couple of years ago, even though he's already an older person. Okay? Had him at my Shabbos table. And you know what he told me? He has trouble sending a bill. And you famous artist, you famous chazan that everybody lines up to get a chance to listen to you, you have trouble saying my fee is X dollars? It's okay. Because after all, I love what I'm doing. It's hard for me to say, and you owe me $3,000 for doing it over a Shabbos. Okay? So that's universal. So I think, I'm sharing that because I think once you realize that everybody deals with that, it's easier to deal with. Okay? I'm sorry?
That's what I hired people to do for?
Yes. The bottom line is that yes, at the end of the, you know what the best way to handle it is? Let your wife send it. She has no trouble saying, you owe us money. Right? That works a lot better. Okay. So we talked about soft skills. Okay, we want to start.
10,
yes, I think so. Okay. We talked about showing. Oh, wrong way. Wrong way here. Okay, why is it going in the wrong direction? That's what? There you go. What? Okay. So, focusing right now on coming up with what are your skills and how do we put that into a job description. So this book is absolutely valuable, okay? Absolutely valuable. What Color is Your Parachute has been the bestseller. It's often referred to as the Job Hunter's Bible. It has been the madrich, the hadracha in job search for over 40 years. And what I find over and over again is that there'll be other books and they'll say, no, this has replaced Parachute. Okay, the Parachute is old, it's 40 years after all, right? And then I read the new one, and word for word it says the same thing. They're all just trying to put their own spin, and they're really just recycling what is commonly known as Parachute. Notice that it's rewritten every single year. 40 years in a row, they rewrite the book. I happen to find it very attractive. And if you get the book, you'll see it right away, that this author, Richard Bolles, who today is a man in his 80s, is a very frum Christian. And he puts that straight out. The fact of the matter is that he got into this line, he was a galach, he was a priest. And back about 40 years ago, about maybe 45, 50 years ago, his particular kind of Christianity, I don't know, I'm not an expert in these things, started losing members. And they found themselves with too many priests and they had to fire them. Okay? Well, they didn't want to just throw them out. So they asked him, can you figure out a way to help all these priests that we need to get rid of find new jobs? So he started giving these classes for priests. The priests started asking if they could bring their friends, and lo and behold, eventually he created What Color is Your Parachute? Okay? The drasha as to what the title means is not necessary. The bottom line is, this book will guide you step by step in the key experience of going through everything you have done and pulling out these skills and interests. So if that is something you're having trouble with, this really is the answer. And the truth is that probably 70% of what I do in my work in Pathways to Parnassa is I'm teaching Parachute. Okay? It's really very, very much introspective. It requires a lot of discipline to get yourself to think about these things carefully and with discipline, and that's pretty hard. So I basically, with many of the clients I work with, teach them or work them through, help them work through the exercises in this book. But if you want to get started, if you want to have an introduction to the process of focusing on what really is your thing, and like I said, and I happen to appreciate it, and I think you will too, the fact that he says very openly, God put you in the world for a special purpose. He means the same for Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? And you absolutely should be looking to fulfill that purpose and not let your life go to waste. I think that's a very good message. And seeing it in the same book, to me, was a chizuk. So that's my own personal feeling. It is in there. Like I say, he's a Christian, but he means that there is a borei, there is a tachlis, you are put here for a reason, and your work should be part of it. I find that message helpful. But this book is the foundation that every other guide to job hunting uses. So go for the best, go for the classic. It's all up to date, and you can walk into any bookstore, ask them for Parachute, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Go to Amazon, also type in Parachute, you'll get it. But I'll try to get them, there's 40 different editions, right? Go for the most recent one. It really is changed every year to reflect changing conditions in the job market. So that's one thing. His theory as to how you can really get a grasp on the skills that you have and that you've been using is he said you should sit down and write stories about things that you've done. Actually write out a story and then analyze it in the way that we just did. And that is a very powerful tool if you can get yourself to sit down and do it. So that is one approach. He says that if you do 7 stories about your life, things that you did, you'll begin to find common themes emerging that will help you move forward. So that is the beginning. So this is an extremely important work. Again, get started with it. You may find that you want to work together with a friend, or that you want to call a coach, perhaps. I can recommend one. That will help you with this process. What if you don't find anything? Well, this quote is very helpful. If you don't find a skill, it's probably because you've got the wrong definition of what a skill might be. Okay? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will go through life thinking that it's stupid. In the same way, if you're judging yourself or looking for skills, at the same time comparing yourself to your friend down the block who just made $1 million in real estate, and you say, well, I just don't have anything that's like him, so I'm going to be a failure. No, you're just different. And there may be something totally different waiting for you that will, and maybe it may be your $1 million, it may not be. I emphasize very often, and I'm sure you'll understand it, that it's a lot easier to be happy on less money than it is to be rich on less happy. So keep that in mind. Don't fall for the propaganda that says, well, if you go into social work, you'll never make a living. There are plenty of people who go into real estate and don't make a living because it's not for them. But there are people who go into social work and find an angle and start something new and create something and end up being extremely important. And they may just in fact make a good living. Simple Scholar that went around Lifeline is familiar to you. Simple Scholar created Lifeline and he makes $500,000 a year. Not a bad salary. He's responsible for raising $20 million a year, which is why he deserves a salary of $500,000. But he gets it done. But I'm sure when he decided what he was going to do with his life, there were people who said, you'll be poor all your life. You'll never have anything. 2 points. Number one, he's doing okay. Secondly, he matters. He changes lives. That's worth something. But the bottom line always has to be, I really think it's important, is it really is true that you can be happy with less money a lot easier than you can be rich with less happy. So if you really want something, if you're getting up in the morning and doing something that you care about, it's worth a huge amount. Not only do you end up making more money anyway, but you end up a better husband, for sure a better father. This is worth it. So this is really important. If you're finding that you're not coming up with skills, you're probably judging your skills the wrong way. There probably are other things that you've done. Think about yourself in a different way. Okay. Next one. There may be things that are lying within you that you've never brought out. Maybe you're still at the stage where you have a talent, but it hasn't yet turned into anything. How do you make that happen? Well, here's a talent for talking to people, for being friendly, for writing, for singing, for poetry, for what, I don't know, whatever. But that doesn't become a real strength, a real skill that's worth selling to someone until there's investment, until you've developed it, until you've turned it into basically pro quality, professional grade, they call it. All right? For example, I love messing around with wood, building stuff. The quality is zero, okay? It looks like it was made by a 5-year-old. So one would say, well, you like building stuff, you're handy. That's not ready to become a job. If I wanted it to be a job, I would have to invest in building a skill until it was valuable. This is the way to turn a talent into a strength. This is the second book that you may find very, very helpful. It's called StrengthsFinder 2.0. Right? You'll finish up. I think this is the next to last one. StrengthsFinder is also available in any bookstore. You can pick it up on Amazon for $10, $12. The key is, though, in the back of the book is a code. If you buy it on Amazon, make sure you're buying one that has the code inside. It'll say so. If it doesn't say so, don't buy it. The code, the book is really nothing. There's almost nothing to read in the book. The code gets you access to the website where you go through a questionnaire from which they are able to bring out your 5 most important skills. I just did it myself the other day. A friend of mine just introduced me to this. Baruch Hashem, the skills that came out really match what I'm doing, so I seem to be in the right job. Baruch Hashem. But the way that they did it was very, very interesting. It was very helpful, and it's been done by millions of people all around the world. It has a great reputation. You will get, at the end of taking the questionnaire that takes about 20 to 30 minutes, you get a printout. It gives you resources of how to move forward. It's a very, very good way to start focusing on what are your key strengths. It won't tell you what job to get, okay? And that's really important. Don't listen to anybody who says, oh, you should be an accountant. Why? Because you're good with numbers. So are people who do a billion other jobs. That's only a skill. What you do with it is open to everything. And just the opposite. There are many, many people who do extremely well who don't have the standard skills for a job. And that's exactly what motivated them to work harder and come up with an angle. I'll just share one story that I think is a lot of fun because of this. I'm sure you've all heard of the famous Rothschild family, right? The Rothschilds, the most famous, wealthiest Jews in history. Unfortunately, there are no halakhically Jewish Rothschilds left. They're all Goyim, very sadly. But they're still rich. They are still one of the richest families in the world, and I believe that makes it the oldest private fortune on the planet Earth. They've been richer than anybody since the early 1800s. So they're going into their third century. Not bad. Unfortunately, like I said, the Yiddishkeit was lost, but the money is definitely not lost. The first one who really made them into the world powerhouse that changed the world was Nathan. There were brothers. Nathan went to London. He founded NM Rothschild. It's still there today. Until a couple of years ago, the Daily Gold Fix was in his office, still there. Nathan Rothschild. Nathan Rothschild was so powerful that it was said, in all sincerity, that if you want to know what England is doing, ask Nathan Rothschild. If he says he doesn't know, you might try the Prime Minister. Nathan Rothschild controlled money in a way that no one else ever had done before. And Nathan Rothschild was a disaster with numbers. There are letters still sitting, I did some research on this, you can read the book. There are letters sitting in the archive of the company in London where his father writes him in Yiddish, ranking him out, that your records are not accurate, that you're not careful about your math, that your reports don't reflect, he was a terrible accountant. It seems to have worked out okay. What's the trouble? Because he had motivation, he had creativity, he had drive, and whatever he wasn't good at, he figured out how to get around it. And that can be the same for all of us. Just because you don't have the standard skills for a job doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you'll have to come up with another way. And just because you have the skills for one standard job doesn't mean you have to do that one. You may find them applicable somewhere else. Because that matters to you, and that's what you want. That is a key point.
Question.
Can I just, get you 1 second? I think this is our last one. Okay? And then, once you have identified these skills, then you assemble the pieces, creating a job description. That is how you go forward to the next step, which I hope we'll talk about next time. Okay?